Yeah. Call the Safety Board meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Janowick?
Here.
Mr. Kometz? Is absent. Mr. Moran?
Here.
Mr. DeYoung?
Here.
Mr. Paradiso?
Here.
Stephen Flores is absent this evening. Deputy Chief Demeter?
Here.
Chief Leduc?
Here.
Michael Schilling?
Here.
And Adam Decker is absent.
I'm going to wait 2 seconds.
Oh, Mr.
Mr.
Kometz
Kometz will be
Mr.
walking in the door. Okay, I need approval for minutes from February 14th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
I have Mr. DeYoung, second.
Second.
I think Pat got that.
That's all right.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Monthly reports for January. Fire Department.
For EMS, we had a total patient contacts of 131. Of those patient contacts, 79% were our ALS1, 2% were ALS2, and 19% were BLS. Of our patient contacts, 74 were resident, 20 were non-resident. We still are transporting grossly to Dyer Hospital, about 45%, followed by Franciscan Crown Point, Franciscan Munster. We billed out a total of 104,113.15. We collected 55,000. For fire, we had a total of 162 calls last month. The vast majority in the town of St. John. We did do 8 for our mutual aid departments, and we did 14 in the township.
That's it. Police Department, Chief.
From February 1st, 2022 through February 28th, 2022, the members of the St. John Police Department logged 19,800 miles and responded to 526 law incidences. The investigation of these incidents led to 21 arrests, with 31 charges being filed. I'm not loud enough. There were 204 traffic citations issued, along with 209 written warnings, for a total of 413 citations being issued during the month. Vehicle thefts totaled 0. Other thefts totaled $7,895, with recovered property totaled at $943.
Old Business, Fire Department.
Just real quick, I'm anticipating at the Wednesday town council meeting, you guys did give approval to hire one of our open positions where Deputy Chief Gillette moved up to the office. I believe the town council is going to take action and vote to maybe fill that, or at least speak on it Wednesday. We would move money from our part-time to our full-time to cover that spot. And my only other old business was we did put in for 2 grants this year, the SAFER and the AFG grant. We haven't heard anything back in either of those.
Okay.
How does your list look right now, Chief?
There are 4. However, the person that is next, I don't know how interested he or she may be in. The person after that is still very interested. Then 2 people that are on another the last 2 people are on another department already, and they've already expressed they want to be off the list. I did get notice that Niko Vukovic, who is a firefighter paramedic, currently got accepted to med school at IU. He will be leaving, I believe, in May. So I'm very close, especially
We should start testing.
Absolutely.
In the next, probably April timeframe.
So I will review the general orders with you guys and start advertising for that.
And lastly, SAFER should probably, I don't know if you've heard the updates, it should be around June.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, New Business, Fire Department.
Sorry. The only thing that I have for you guys today is it's been a labor, I don't want to say labor of love, but our SOGs and orders and everything. So we went through and have, we've turned one into you guys, I think in November. You guys had an opportunity to make some suggestions, be corrected some of the suggestions. We're turning it back into you. Currently, we really don't have anything of substance on file. We did turn in a lot, so I know this will be a work in progress, but we're looking just for something to get on file so we can start moving forward a little bit better.
You're asking for a motion for approval for the
Okay,
version?
okay, go ahead. I'd like to, I went through this. If we can, want to discuss this first, or you want to make a motion and then go into
No,
discussion?
no, I was just asking.
Yeah, so I'm looking for a motion, but I'm open to discussion
Yeah,
as well.
that's what I'm saying. Go ahead and open for discussion.
I went through all the way to 421, which was on that email that I seen, which was about half of the book last night, and looked at every one of them. I don't see any big problems in any of them. I would like to go through the whole thing, have time to go through the whole thing in depth, but, I mean, I would say temporarily, we can accept everything through 421.
That's the pleasure of the board. I'm also okay with if you
That's,
guys.
I'm just talking, so the board knows. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to go through all of them.
I understand the kind of the position that you're in of not having much to go on and how that can affect. I'm kind of the opinion to just approve it and then have, with the ability, make the motion to, basically give you approval of all your SOGs, with the ability to make changes as needed. If something comes up, something changes, obviously it's a guideline. If your operation changes, if something else like that, obviously, but I understand the need to have something to go off of.
Yeah, it's at your pleasure. I just, right now, there's some points where we need to have
And
something.
unfortunately, I think the liability is higher than what of not having anything right now than just having something, having a 90% product.
I just want to say, I read through a lot of them, and it's some good work in there. It looks very professional, and it's been a long time coming, as you know.
Yeah,
So,
I appreciate it, and it wasn't
Yeah.
just me. It was, like I said, a labor.
well, whoever was involved, it's a very professional-looking, SOG, and I think it'll be really good for your agency, for your
We
department.
appreciate that.
Okay, is someone want to make a motion on the approval of this, or?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve, second,
I'll second it.
by Ray Paradiso. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, Chief, the police department.
As you're aware, we're going to be contingently losing one of our officers toward the end of the month here, Officer Patchke. I think Chief Flores had sent you guys an email about that. With the staffing levels at the way they are now, we were hoping to declare an emergency and start an emergency process that the board let us do back in 2020, if you recall that. The process worked really well. There's no sense reinventing the wheel on this, and if we have the approval to do that, in your packet, there's a tentative timeline that theoretically, if everything goes smoothly, we could have boots on the ground mid-May.
So the only question, I know we had kind of gone back and forth on that. Do you not have a current list, Chief?
We have a current list, however, it is the open list for all hirees. So in other words, if we get somebody that is not academy certified on that list, then we have to wait the 6 months for the academy and then the full FTO. So with the level that we have now with staffing, with Jake leaving, Patchke leaving, Officer Patchke, that's actually taking away a third to a half of some of our actual duty crews with
Okay,
that. And we
okay.
can fix it for a very short time, but taking into consideration training days, vacation, sick time, we're really gonna be hurting. So if the board would see fit to go ahead and let us do this, the time frame would be greatly reduced from hiring somebody new. And I think Chief Florida talked about that, if we get the CARES Act money and we're allowed to buy, or hire a couple other officers, one or two, whatever it is, those will actually be additional, they'll supplement the staff. So that's where we would either utilize the list we have now, or if it's expired, complete a new list.
Are you gonna you're gonna advertise? Could you walk us through the process of emergency hire?
Sure. What we do with the emergency hires, we'll send out I'll pull up the sheet here. We'll send out a message on Spillman area departments. We do a press release. With that, it'll have the requirements that are needed to have that. They have to be an Indiana officer, accredited Indiana officer, that's in the pension plan already for good standing, because that's just a letter transfer. We don't have to go through the psychological, the physical, and the agility test for that. After that, we'll go ahead and do an interview process like we did in 2020. After we do the interview process, the chief will review the points with the not medical, but the military, education, all those things that add up to the points with the interview points, and then he establishes a list off of that. And I believe last time you guys approved a year, to have that list for a year, so if we have any other emergency vacancies in that year, we could take it off that list. But the process worked really well in 2020, it went pretty smooth, and we got some good candidates out of it.
Were we involved in that process?
I don't recall.
No, we weren't involved. Since this board's been in place, I believe there's been at least 2 officers hired above what you normally had. And now we're gonna be losing 1, so you're still technically plus 1.
Well, we had 1 extra officer, we're at 24 now with Officer Wortman, but he came off of the actual eligibility list that we established back in October.
But I
So-
also believe we hired somebody off the emergency list too, at least 1.
They did that one time,
Yeah.
he was talking about that 2020. I know
Schaefer, I think.
a lot of times in the past, when there's been times when the officer is left under quick circumstance where it's not an announced retirement or we're adding people, they've used the emergency process. They've done it a couple times even before 2020. When they needed someone that's already certified, they'll go through the emergency process because the list that's currently doesn't have people that can come in that it's trained. I know I've heard the emergency process before, and I know they've done it probably 7 times previous to this too, when they've had a sudden person resign or quit. You know, and that's what we have here, is someone is getting a job somewhere else and is leaving.
And we literally had 4 days' notice with this. This came out of the blue for us.
No, I understand that, I understand the process. What I'm saying is if today you have 20 people and you hire 2 and you have 22, and then 6 months or 8 months later, someone quits, you're 2 above where you were, but then that 1 person creates emergency hiring. So every time you hire someone and someone leaves, it becomes emergency hiring until you hire additional. It's,
That's true. However, if there are additional officers that aren't counted as staffing now, we have a little bit more time with that. Whereas we don't have that with Officer Patchke if he leaves on the 25th. That's going to create an immediate vacancy. We just discussed out there how we're understaffed. You guys said several times we're understaffed, and with him leaving, we're going to feel that a lot more than we would feel it waiting for 2 extra guys to come on the crew.
Do we know that everybody on the list that we have on the active list now is not trained?
I can't answer, I don't know.
Well, that's what we should look at first. We should look at our active list and see if there's anybody on that active list that is trained, and then maybe go from there and take that person off the active list that is trained.
I'm not sure if, once again, you probably have to discuss this with Attorney Becker, but I'm not sure that you can just pick anybody off of that list and.
Well, it's just like taking somebody in an emergency, you just take them off that
Yeah,
list.
Ray, you can't take them off a certified list, though. I mean, if you got number 3 on the list, he's number 3 on the list. You just can't say, because he's been a
And they
former police
actually,
officer.
and they tested for an additional position. It's not, so let's say I was number 2 on the list to get hired, and I worked at his tire shop, and you went to number 3 because he had Academy of Certification. I don't know if, is that fair to number 2 because he's next on the list? So if we get the CARES Act, those guys will get those jobs, whether they're Academy certified or not, because they're additional.
Well, I believe like number 3 could be considered for the emergency hired list. Even though he's on the regular list, you're gonna have an emergency hire list as well, correct?
Yeah, but it'll be a separate process. We'd have to.
Yes,
'cause
but
that-
if
right,
somebody's in the
correct.
queue at 3 or 4 on the regular list and they're certified, they could be part of that emergency hire list too, correct?
Yes.
in addition, on the last emergency hire, which was posted, when the testing process came up, some of those officers did not take the test. It seems a little not quite right.
We didn't have a written test for the emergency process in 2020.
No.
Well, I think when the
When we
emergency
posted
list
the
came up,
emergency-
they probably didn't have the requirements that met the emergency hire application. They weren't certified in the pension, or they weren't a certified Indiana policeman.
And what I'm saying is you had an emergency hire list. It was approved.
Mhm.
Then we gave a full-time test. Some of the officers on the emergency hire list who were approved did not take the full-time test, which doesn't seem fair to the people who did and went through that process either. Who got hired before people who got approved for both processes.
I don't understand what,
Okay. I apply for and get approved on an emergency hire list, which you post. 3 months from now, you guys do a full-time hire list, which I take that test. I'm on both lists. Some of the people on emergency hire list did not take the full-time test. They just sat back and said, I'll wait until they hire me off the emergency hire list. Seems a little unfair to the people taking both tests.
well, the difference would be there also that the emergency hire list is good for a much shorter duration of time than the additional hire list, because I know that there's actually officers on the list that we have now, the established eligibility list, that have tested for all the last emergency hire we had. So that list is gone. It's expired, so they're not really on the two lists anymore, but they could test for the second one.
No, but again, it's still gonna happen. And what I'm saying is, I understand
Oh,
this
yeah,
one
probably,
expired. But as soon as you give another emergency hire test, you could be back in the same process.
So I think, I mean, what I'm hearing is we need a couple things. We need to know if there's any certified officers that are on the current list right now. I mean, I know once this board got established, we went round and round with the emergency hire list because I know out in the public, it seems, and from what we have heard, is that you can't get hired in St. John unless you're already a certified police officer. And we were trying to take that stigma away. Whether it was Dyer, whether it was Munster, whether it was anywhere else in Northwest Indiana, the stigma was you cannot get hired in St. John, Indiana unless you're a certified officer. And that's not equal opportunity hiring, and we've talked about that. We understand, and what we never really did and what we never came up with is what truly constitutes an emergency. I think the chairman was talking about we've done more hiring. There's more officers on the street than when this board was started, but now we're still back to having an emergency. So we're trying to play a fine line as to what actually constitutes an emergency.
I can't decide for the board, but I
know.
can tell you after being here for almost 26 years, that when you take one officer out of a department that has 24 officers out of a crew, that's an emergency. We already should have more officers than we do. I think everybody's in agreement in that room. Taking one away causes even more scheduling issues with us, more safety issues, because now instead of having 3 guys out, we're back to 2 guys out. We feel that really hard when we lose somebody that's already here. If, I'll use the example of Officer Wartzman, the one we just hired. He was totally additional. He never counted on the schedule before. When we got him, now we added him. So that adjusts different training days, that adjusts if people are on vacation, an unscheduled sick day. Now he's part of the schedule. Before he wasn't, just like the 2, if we get a couple more through the CARES Act. They're not part of our mix right now. Whereas Officer Patchke, with the time frame that we have here, he's already in there. So there's people that have training days, vacation days, sick days, which we can work around temporarily, but in the long run, like I said earlier, that's cutting us down from 3 to 2. Sometimes if he's one of the 2 guys out, now we're down to 1, so we have to move somebody off another shift to short that shift. So we're, taking from Peter to pay Paul. So that's where in our lives, I would classify that as an emergency.
Yeah, but every time, if you hired 4 extra people today, and 6 months from now someone quits, it becomes an emergency. Every time someone quits, it becomes an emergency. If I have 24 officers and 1 quits, it becomes an emergency. So we hire them as an emergency, and then next year we hire 2 additional officers. I got 26, 1 quits, it becomes an emergency. It's almost every other hiring is an emergency, no matter how much bigger the department gets. Not that you're overloaded with officers, don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying is every other hiring becomes an emergency.
And I understand your logic there, and I appreciate what you're saying. However, it is an emergency this time. We've already planned for him for an entire year that he's gone now. So we're going to feel that void. Whereas if we have 26 people, and I might be speaking on a turn here, but I don't think that happens. We don't have a high turnover rate here. With Officer Patchke leaving, the last person that left was Chief Gavitan, and he just lost his job. It wasn't. We don't have people quitting here. It's not happening all the time. So
And I'm not addressing that. I'm just saying, I believe we've done at least 2 emergency hirings and hired 2 additional people in the 2+ years we've been on this board.
Well, I know that we did an emergency hire to replace Chief Gavitan. That was in 2020. I know we established a list for that.
I think we only did one. I
Was
think
that
it
Officer Schaefer?
From
Yeah.
Dyer, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Officer Wortman, the additional guy that we just got, like I said, he came off the existing eligibility list. So we were just lucky that he was Academy certified next, because if he wasn't, we'd be sending that officer to the Academy.
Well, I don't know what the board's direction is, but at least it's possible to see if anybody on the current list is certified, and if it's possible to,
The current eligibility list.
right.
But what if they're far down on the list, you know? and
We
that-
can't jump.
We'd
We
have to
can't
look
jump-
at,
we
we'd have
can't
to
jump.
look
Look
at,
and see if
you'd have to look at the
emergency
law.
hire can
And you have to
bring
look
them
at the
up.
law, but if he were far down on the list, it wouldn't be much different than if he took the emergency hire test and finished number one.
You'd have to, we gotta get some counsel
But
on
you
that,
gotta
because
get
there are
some-
certain circumstances based on certifications where a chief can jump certain things. And I know it varies state to state, different things like that. I'm not speaking for the state of Indiana. But depending on where it is and where you land on the list, there are certain, on the fire side, you know, if you can skip a non-paramedic for a paramedic in certain states. I don't know what the Indiana law is, I can't speak to it, but
I don't know that either. You'd have to,
Well, we'll
To run
find,
that by Attorney Ducker.
I'll be emailing Adam tomorrow, trust me.
and how long do you think that response would be from Adam? Is he pretty quick at getting back at you?
Adam's very quick at responding. I think.
I mean, I know we're not gonna meet for another month. I think it's, I know you're looking for some sort of a decision,
You
Chief.
could, because a month is a long time.
I mean, I would be inclined to go ahead and establish a new emergency hire list, just to have it. Then based on the outcome of what some of the research says on whether we used a current eligibility list versus an emergency hire list, at least it starts the process. I don't know what the
No,
members
that-
feel about.
that's the way I was
At least you can get the
thinking
process going. You can kind of do your advertisement, you can do your background checks, you could do your,
The apps and
the other
everything, all that
stuff.
stuff.
I don't know if anybody from the board would like to, I know we sat on the fire hires. I don't know if anybody from the board would be interested in, or if the chief would entertain that of having some board members on it. But at least you could get the advertisement done and kind of get some names and get some applications turned in, and then kind of research some of the law versus, and you've got it at your disposal should that be the answer. I think that's the fairest.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, the motion would be to establish the emergency hire list or start the process. And use of it would be determined on the answer to the,
Based on Attorney Ducker's.
right.
Based on, right.
So, okay, Steve, you have the motion for that then?
So I'll make a motion to begin the establishment procedures for an emergency hire list. And then, based on the outcome from some legal counsel, and then we'll make the determination next month as to defer the actual answer to what list we're gonna hire off of till next month.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Can I just say, if he gives us an answer tomorrow, can we make I wish Adam was here, can we
In the
make a
process.
stipulation that if he says, no, you gotta do it, can we?
Well, I think it's still important to have an emergency hire list posted. You know, if something catastrophic happened, and God forbid, I mean, one of the biggest injury and death causes right now is road injuries across the country. It's, people not paying attention. There was just 2 officers killed again this morning in Pennsylvania. So I think it's important to have it established and have it available should that have to happen, so it doesn't hurt to have it. Based on what they say, we would make the determination on what list to hire off of. If that's,
Yeah, that would be, the list would be there in existence, depending on Adam's opinion, which list would he get hired off of. Just the same if there was one on the current hire list and he took it and that list was empty, the emergency hire list would now become.
And that's not gonna change our time frame on this end either, so that's.
Sure.
that's a
Correct.
good-
Sure.
that's
Is
a
that
good
fair, Chief?
compromise. Mhm.
Can I just ask one
The
thing?
motion on the floor would cover both the scenarios, depending
Correct.
on what the attorney says.
I just want to ask, is there a test for the emergency hire or no?
No, we don't do
No
a written
test,
test. no.
okay. And what's the general, like probation, is there a probationary period for an emergency hire?
For if they get hired?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's-
yeah,
what
yeah,
is it?
Well, it's usually 6 months for somebody that has police training. If it's a totally new person that doesn't, it's 12 months.
Okay.
Okay, I have the motion, I still need a second.
I'll second it.
Ray Paradiso, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You lost again, you're second again.
Okay, chief, next. Promotional process.
Also Chief Flores wanted to bring up, I believe that he did not bring this up at the last month's meeting, but he wanted to get the approval. I think he talked to the board commissioner about that, to go ahead with the promotional process, and I got a little timeline here if you gentlemen would like to hear it.
Sure.
So far what we're looking at is doing a written test on Tuesday, April 12th at 4 PM. That'll be at the PD. And then, depending on the test results, we will do interviews Tuesday, April 26th, starting at 5 PM, and Saturday, April 30th, starting at 9 AM.
What was the second date?
The April 30th.
30th, got it.
And
Just so everybody knows, at this point, Mr. Moran and myself will be sitting in on the entire process.
Okay.
Okay, then I need a promotion, or a promotion,
Well, if you're giving out promotions, whatever you'd like. Take one.
I don't think Steve would like that at this point.
Oh, he'd love it. He's probably watching from Florida.
Hi, Steve. I need a motion to approve the start of the promotional process for the officers.
I'll make that motion to start the promotional process.
Pat Moran made a motion, second.
I'll second it.
Rob Clements, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Chief, getting easier for you. K-9 match retirement.
As you're aware, Match will be retiring after 8.5 years of service with St. John Police Department. The chief wanted me to extend an invitation for the meeting Wednesday, the 23rd, the town council meeting. They're gonna, I guess, sign Match over. I'm not familiar with it, but they let Shane buy Match for $1 or something, and then he gets to keep them for the remainder of his life, so.
Did you have approval for the second dog then? Is that?
Yeah, we do have approval, and
Okay.
Chief Flores right now is pursuing several options, and I'm sure once he gets back from vacation, a decision will be made on that. But yeah, we did secure funding for that.
Okay, good.
How long before the second dog is able to come up online?
Depends on when we get the dog and how much training. There's some questions Shane was looking into, because he's already a handler, he might not have to go, if that's the route we go, he might not have to go through the whole process, but we're not sure about that yet, so
Okay, that it?
that's all I have.
Public comment? Doesn't look too bad. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion by Ray Paradiso, second.
Second.
By Steve DeYoung, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
How many people do they have on the current list?